All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. Today, I'm grateful to be joined by Stephanie Sylvestre of Avatar Buddy. We're going to be having a conversation today about bringing some social science experts into the process of training and developing and building AI. I'm really excited to have that conversation. And Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk about AI, especially when we think about AI as a social construct. So let's get going.
Fantastic. Um, Before we get into the topic of today, which is adding those social science folks into the AI conversation when building AI and building AI companies, I would love if we could go through your career and entrepreneurial journey a little bit. You've told me some very interesting things already, but could you share a little bit about how you got to this point? Maybe start with what was the first job you had out of college, and then I'll throw a couple of questions at you. We'll make our way there at about the 30-minute mark.
Okay, I'll start just before I graduated from college. So I have a master's in economic development and international studies from the University of Miami. And I was living in Miami waiting for elections so I can go back to Belize and put my degree to work. And I got a job as an intern at Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard had this seed program, and these ladies figured out that they could use the seed program to get a secretary. So my first job out of college was a secretary. But the really cool thing about that, um, and what I tell people is, if the pay is okay, don't worry about what you're gonna do because you'll still win in the end. So I'm at Hewlett Packard. I'm a secretary. I mean, obviously, I know how to do secretarial duties very quickly. So most of the day, I'm just hanging out, messing around with the computer. This was back in 96, 95, 96. And one of the original coders of Unix also was in that office. And if you know anything about Unix, if your job is to maintain Unix code, you basically have nothing to do. And so
Mm.
I'm walking around the floor and I run into him and he's talking to me because he's bored. I'm talking to him because I'm bored. And we just developed a friendship. And I did not know the importance of who this guy was until many years later. And I cannot remember his name.
Oh, sure.
But what was great about that introduction was that I learned how computers work, the framework, the details of it. And then when I got my first job after being an intern, I could navigate through technology. So I've spent my entire career in tech, even though I have a master's in economic development and international studies. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm an award-winning tech person. In 2019, I got CIO of the year, and I was one of the few CIOs in the world that was ready for COVID. So
Oh,
when everybody's doing disaster management drills, I
mhm.
was trying to convince my executive team that they just need to make sure that their team members take home their laptop and the power cable because they would lock their laptops up in their drawers. And I was like, don't just take your laptop because you're going to run out of juice. Take your
Yeah,
power cable too. That was
yeah.
it. That was my disaster recovery. Make sure you take your power cable with your laptop home.
Make
Not
sure you
not
have
did not miss a beat.
a way to work, a way to
Yeah.
keep going. That's funny. So That's pretty interesting. Now, I think those three skills play together really well. Economic development and technology, and international studies. Just sounds like a really great way to create wonderful networks full of interesting people that are like making shit happen. Talk to
Yeah.
me. Talk to me a little bit about um, like how you see the current state of our economy and what's possible with somebody that has an international, not necessarily specifically to the US, but kind of just what's happening right now in the world from an international perspective, from a technology perspective, and from somebody that also understands economic development at a really high level.
Yeah. So when I look around the world today, I believe that we have untapped potential. And last fall, I spent 6 weeks in Africa. I traveled to 3 African countries. I lived in Cape Town for a month, and what I took away from that is, with AI, people on top potential can now be completely leveraged. What we have now is the gatekeepers who either intentionally or unintentionally are trying to keep them away from AI, because if you consider AI as a social construct, the social order is going to be changed. It is starting to change, but when we enroll masses into using AI, and they now have access to the same information and the same content that previously was only limited to a handful of people,
It was
then
cost prohibitive because you had to
and
go to
cost
school to get it.
prohibitive, um, it's a game changer in just what you can do and how you're interacting with the world. So I think that AI is a great tool, and if you configure it appropriately, it turns into a solution that then really changes how the world works. And one of the things that I will say, that it took about 30 years to to start using my degree, because international studies talks about nation building, uh, and AI as a social construct is one of the tenets of a nation building, and economic development is around how do you produce things that can be consumed, goods and services that can be consumed and benefits to society, and that you do no harm in the process. So I already know how to, have been trained on how to view things that way, and then starting my career with such an incredible foundation of knowledge that I did not even realize what kind of wealth was being transferred to me at that time, just put me on a path that allowed me to really navigate and become a top technologist.
Yeah. That's amazing. I want to talk. I want to hit 2 points here related to that knowledge transfer. The way that you said that I thought was fantastic. You, and I'm going to paraphrase it here, but you said I didn't understand the wealth transfer that was happening as I was getting that knowledge, and I think that that is one of the most insightful things that I've heard because what you know and how you can apply what you know. So, like what you know, and then the skill to apply what you know, those are both knowledge based things because skill is just applied knowledge, which is like sharp.
Yeah,
It's like you got a knife, but you sharpened it. Like it's still, knowledge.
yeah.
If you have those things, so much is open to you in the world,
Exactly.
and the way that you said that was so from a position of gratitude and appreciation, and then a willingness to apply it. And I just wanted to take a moment to highlight that because I think so many of us in society today kind of have this impression that, well, once we get knowledge or once we get X, Y, and Z, we're owed something. And I think there was some miscommunication along,
Yeah.
how college works and how to, and that's like a whole other conversation, right? But I think the
Absolutely.
way you said that really speaks to the root of what the reality is that when you have that knowledge, you also have extreme value and wealth. Now, then you have to go apply it to be able to access it, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's the next stage up. But I really, really liked that. The second thing, and I'm going to kind of bunch these together, like sometimes I do with long questions, and feel free to touch on any of it. But I want to connect that thought that I just made to the moment where you met this gentleman who designed Unix, I believe that you said,
Yes.
uh, and he shared a lot of information with you about how things work. I That's amazing, and I think two things are at play: one, his willingness to share, and two, your ability to learn something that's pretty complex, and your willingness to do it. Not a lot of people, kind of get themselves a computer science education for fun, with somebody they meet at work. So feel free, you don't necessarily have to talk about the first part of that, but I would love if you could talk more about that relationship with that gentleman and your experience in learning something that was maybe outside of what you expected to be learning.
Yes. I, Whenever I reflect on that situation, what comes to mind that I'm always grateful to myself and the people around me is, instead of complaining about being a secretary, instead of whining about my job, I turned it into a positive. So I would get to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and I'd leave at 7 o'clock at night. The job was a 9 to 5 job, but I was on the bus, and that was how the bus schedule was, and I was happy. And while I was there, I got so much out of it, and because I was living in a state of gratitude, even though I couldn't articulate that back at that time, I got I was given this bountiful wealth, because I would go and I would talk to him and I'd ask him questions and he would tell me books to read, and I would go and I would buy the books and I would read them, and I had a genuine interest. And for 9 months I got a master class in the foundation of how computers work and how software is developed. And 30 years later, we now have AI, but the way AI is being served up, it's still in the same concept, the same construct as when Unix was started and when we had mainframes. So that's been incredible. And because I was interested, genuinely interested in what he was showing me and teaching me, he was very generous with his knowledge. I don't know that he would have been that way with somebody else if there wasn't that level of interest. And I don't know anything about this computer thing, but let's try it out. Let's figure it out. And what I was really proud of is, back then, I was able to create a website using Notepad, and his under
Wow.
his supervision, and we were able to start tracking orders. And my website was much more accurate than the system that the people had to use to track the orders. But because it wasn't a sanctioned solution, we couldn't roll it out. But what I did was I convinced a couple of people. They would use the official system, and then they'd come and say, Stephanie, look up this order for me. And I would look it up and I would say, this is really where the order is. And based on that, they can give more accurate information. And so, I mean, that was cool. That started my career, my journey, and my path to, how do you leverage technology to make people's lives better. And I did it mostly in corporate environments. After
Tough.
that, I was a boutique consultant.
Let me
Worked.
interrupt you. Let me interrupt you really
Yeah.
quickly, because I want to ask you about that. I have a question that I know I want to ask you next,
Okay.
about that consulting, because you kind of
Okay.
showed me some interesting things. But I want to touch on this point that really excites me about what you just shared with us, and it's that you not only were you like excited and genuinely engaged, and when a student is genuinely engaged, it's really easy for a teacher to get excited, because the teacher has the knowledge, and the reason they're teaching is because they want to share it. But when there's not like a good receiver there, it's like, oh, this fucking sucks. They don't care, you know. But when you really have people that are engaged, it's like, this is what I'm here. So you had that scenario, and then you had the like kind of stumbling block of like, well, this isn't a sanctioned solution. You created something, but we don't get to see it fly. But you still were able to gain, and this is something that I think is really important in training and development, whether it be others or yourself, you still were able to gain that earned confidence of, no, 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 I did something here that was better than, whether or not it went all the way and was used, this was better than what was otherwise being used. And even though you didn't have that formalized training, you were able to take that and put it as a part of yourself without this, these not good enough complexes that lots of people have when they don't do things traditionally.
Yeah.
And you had that earned confidence to say, oh no, I really do know some shit here. Can you talk a little bit about that? And have you ever had similar experiences go the other way where you did have a lack of confidence or own experience?
Well, the thing about when you're 24, 25, and you graduate from schools like University of Miami and University of Southern California, where they're pouring knowledge and confidence into you all day long. You just walk out of there thinking you can just crush the world until the world kind of like smacks you around a little bit.
That was not my experience walking out of Michigan. But I mean, different strokes, different folks. I felt like a fish out of. I felt like a small fish that ended up in a big pond. You know, but everybody looks at the world differently.
Well, USC and UM were big institutions, but they had very small curated classes. So besides my physics class, I don't think I had a class in any of those universities that had more than 12 people in it.
Mm.
So I mean, class size. So if you're in a class with 12 people and the professor is teaching you these things and they're taking extra time, they have the bandwidth to take extra time, you have office hours. I figured out very early on that if you go to office hours, that's like maybe a half a grade point just by just going to office hours and just hanging out with the professors. I was like, I can do this all day long. Um, I and so I was confident, and the reason why I still walk through life with the level of confidence that I do is because um, I'm always surrounded by people that are helping me.
Mm.
And when you're surrounded with a team of people, then then the then it makes it easier for you to be successful because you have a team. You got somebody that got has your back. Um, I will say 2023 when I decided to jump in full steam ahead and being an entrepreneur
Hmm.
definitely had lots of self-doubt, and it wasn't until my lead investor came on the scene that I really started feeling a little bit of confidence. And then even then it took me 9 months to get back to a
Sure.
level of confidence, and another 5 months to have no uh questioning um be in my sphere of thinking. And so again, right, what I realized is when I went full on, I was just hanging out there by myself. I didn't really have anybody that was believing in me and willing to share their knowledge. And then my lead investor came along. He wrote some checks, but he didn't just write checks. He did another knowledge transfer, and he shared how he views the world, and he's an uber successful person. So I was able to get, oh, that's what that means. Oh, this is how that works. Oh, this is a different way. Ah, and then he again did a master class. He took me on a business trip for 3 days, and for 3 days, I watched how he did everything,
Hmm.
and that I was like, oh, okay, this is how we do this, and that was an incredible master class again, and then it was about incorporating all that learning into my daily life in a way that just works.
Right.
And then and it's like, okay, I can forge ahead. So the importance, I would say, that the ability to live in a state of gratitude when people are willing to do knowledge share, consuming it as much as possible, even if you don't fully understand what knowledge is being transferred to you. Because if you just stay in that state and then also do reflection, you're going to get to a point in your life where it will just all start to connect and the light bulb will go off and you're going to be, I got this. I got this.
That makes sense. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you went into some, I think you called it petite consulting. And before we went live, you told me that you did some of that specific consulting at a pretty interesting organization. Can you kind of share some of those stories?
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, absolutely. After I left Hewlett Packard, I went to a boutique consulting firm, and again, great knowledge transfer. They sent us to Boston for 2 weeks to learn how to be a consultant. I thought, this- I mean, just imagine being 24 years old in Boston for 2 weeks, and there's a group of people training you on how to be a consultant, and that training still use about 90% of what I've learned during those 2 weeks. I still use that today. And so we were on a project in Dublin, Ohio, and they sent me there for a month. I had to stay there for the entire month, and I was working with Enron at the time. And I just thought it was very interesting because
Tell tell
one
all
part of
the
my huh
tell all these young entrepreneurs that weren't paying attention what the hell Enron is and what happened there. You could give like the quick.
and Enron was a oil and gas company that the top brass were cooking the books, and their accounting firm, their auditors were in on it, and some people ended up going to jail for it.
Yeah.
But worse so, the good people of Enron, they lost their life savings because they had to invest in that stock. They didn't have an option not to invest. And so all the money that they thought they were going to have for retirement went up into flames. And so that was very unfortunate because at the time when I was at Enron, my spidey senses said something was off. But I mean, I'm 24, 25. I don't know what I don't know. I'm just thinking I'm off. I'm doing self-doubt. I'm not saying, I mean, how can a massive corporation be doing something that's not appropriate?
Hmm.
And what really struck me as strange was I would talk to somebody and I say, explain your job. And then I would ask that person how their job related to the person upstream and downstream in the business process. And they couldn't.
Hmm.
Nobody knew what anybody else did. And even their jobs, they struggled to explain what their jobs were. And in retrospective, that was by design, because if I understand what you do, Zach, and you understand what I do, then we could start comparing notes and go, wait, something's off. But if I don't understand what you do and you don't understand what I do, then we can't compare notes. And it's also a timely reminder because I just read an article today where an AI startup was basically cooking the books again. One, they were cooking the books with creating fake invoicing, and then they were saying AI was doing something when it was just a bunch of humans doing it in the background.
So they're getting investment and stuff on something for the
So it
business.
didn't exist, and
Yeah.
and I thought, and some of the big companies, I
Ugh.
mean, their investors were big companies like Microsoft.
Oh
And it always
gosh.
keeps me remind me and say, even no matter how big the company is, they're still made up of people, and people have fallacies, and they're no different from you and I.
Right.
And so that's a very sobering thing to remember, as I am building my company, and I get frustrated by the fact that I have a very solid, robust software solution. We deploy this. You know what my hardest support issues right now?
What's that?
Getting my customers to call me back. Not that I can't keep up with their calls, getting them to call me back, because whenever I call them, they're asking me, "Why are you calling me? Everything is good. We're
That's
happy."
good. That's
And
good.
then they proceed to tell me all the great things that they're doing with our solution that I didn't even think about. And so that just gives me great hope and great pleasure, that we're doing it right, even if we're not the on the news. We're at least still doing it right. And I just want to pause and say I appreciate people like you that reach out and say, can we have a conversation, because you're giving me a platform for me to extend my reach. So, moment of
Right.
gratitude and appreciation.
Right back at you. I appreciate wonderful people like you coming on and sharing their expertise. You've done you've done a lot in the world of business. You have a lot of different experience, and there are tons of small business owners and startup owners that I work with that I know don't have the perspective that you have. So when you come on and share, it's valuable to the folks, in my community, and that ultimately see this. So it's a wonder. Right back at you. Thank you. Uh,
Thank
I,
you.
I I think I want to touch on one more thing, and I think we're probably at a good point to transition over into the topic of the day. I
Okay.
want to on the experience you had with Enron. You mentioned team members not understanding upstream and downstream, really, like what was the point of what they're doing, what the responsibilities were, what expectations were. And that's something that I like to talk a lot about is transparency. I've had conversations about, being open about P&Ls and profit with your team so they understand how they impact it, so they can have agency in doing better in their careers. I talk a lot about setting expectations so that team members understand what a good job versus a bad job looks like. I think all of those things are elements of transparency that show good operations. And I just wanted to take a moment to like kind of draw that juxtaposition of, well, when you're really transparent and when you're really open, it kind of looks like this. And when you're not, it looks like Enron. And
Exactly.
it's just, bring the transparency to the table, because then your good people can highlight the things that are real problems and solve them. And instead of isolating your good people into a very small box, open it up a little bit so that their positivity can have an impact in the spaces where maybe it needs to.
I totally agree. One of my leadership styles is, um, I would say, looks like I'm leading from a point of vulnerability instead of a point of strength. But by being able to be vulnerable, you're actually stronger. So, first of all, I delegate my authority. And if during the process of delegating my authority, things go well, the person who succeeded, that's the person who gets the spotlight. If during the
Yes.
process things go sideways, I'm the one that goes to the principal's office and I take responsibility. When team members see that you're doing that, they're more willing to bring their A game. Secondly,
There's
I'm
less
honest
risk
with
to
them.
bring the A game too. Sometimes,
Yeah.
forgive me for cutting you off, but sometimes
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, what if I fuck up?" There's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there. But if they know, well, if I mess up, Stephanie's got my back. She's always got my back. Then it's like, we'll go take some cuts.
Exactly. So they're more willing to take risks. And then the second thing is I like to co-dream with people. I
Mm,
don't tell them what to do. I say, here's a future state. And they will come back with something that's close to what I co-dream. Sometimes they come back with something different. When they come back with something different, I usually reflect and say, am I, before I provide feedback, is this going to be helpful? Why am I complaining about this? Is it because it's an ego thing? They didn't do it the way I wanted them? Then there's nothing for me to say. Or did they don't have a piece of information that I have? And so then maybe I need to just provide them with some feedback. But I think the other piece of it is being vulnerable and telling them you don't know, telling them how you feel, um, and being willing to apologize. So I say to people, yeah, this is where we are. And even people that don't work with me there right now, I tell people I'm super excited and proud of what I've done with Avatar Buddy. We're technology wise, we're on point. The way we run the business is on point. Our customers are happy. Um, and we're on track to get almost, I think, with the exception of one person that I'm unsure of, 100% of our customers from last year are going to renew or have already renewed. And some of them are now introducing me to other people, and some of them are expanding how they're using our solution, so they're bringing us more business.
mhm.
And those are great milestones. The only thing I'm not happy with is our finance. And part of that is I'm trying to do something I don't know how to do, which is to sell. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a
Mm,
technologist. I'm square. Like I will sit here and talk about the inner workings of how small language model works all day long. Nobody cares about that. They just want to know, is it going to be safe? That's a yes no question, not a half an hour of all the little things that I'm doing to make sure that it's safe. They don't care.
right.
and and so I think that being able to share that way, people feel happy because they know if something is wrong, I will tell them, and if something is good, I will tell them, and
Mm,
that we're going to share in the victories, and I will own all of the defeats. And by doing that, you create this workspace where you don't need as many people and you can still win. And now with AI, when they're properly configured, that team of people are feeling even better because they're winning faster and more frequently, and so the endorphins in their brains are going off. And to me, as I continue to march towards evolving our product, I feel that I finally have the blueprint to create work environments where people are excited to come to work. When somebody's excited to come to work and they're winning, it means that when they leave work, they're still winning. That positive thing translates in the community. They become better family members. Their family starts performing better. Then they become better community members. The community starts becoming better. And just little by little, the world becomes a little bit better place.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Okay. Well, I'm excited at what we've learned about you and what you've shared with us already. And I'm also excited to transition into topic of the day. Um, Talk to me a little bit about including social science leaders in AI development and why this is important.
Okay, so let me start with when I look at AI, I think it's more than a piece of technology. And I mentioned before, it's a social construct. A social construct means that the way that we think, the way that we interact, the way that we perceive the world, the way that we move around the world is going to change because that's the social construct. The the social contracts that we have with each other are going to change. And It's because of AI. So let's take one thing. An AI can write a paper way better than a human can if you give it the right prompts and you give it the right information. So we can continue to try and ban the use of AI in educational environments, but that's not going to work. What we should be doing is trying to figure out how we can judge and evaluate people based on their use of AI.
Hmm.
So, first social construct that's happening, I must now perceive teaching and learning differently. I second social construct is changing. I must perceive how I evaluate somebody's capacity differently. Third social construct that needs to change. I must change how I reward that individual. So if we then take that and say we have a customer that does this, we want to see the prompts that you're using to get the AI to give you a response. Because if we can see the prompts tell us whether or not you have command of the content area. Because if you use AI and you don't have command of the content area, the AI, it's a missing catch whether the AI is going to respond appropriately. But if you have command of the content area, your prompts are much more robust and the AI provides a much richer and comprehensive response. But that's a massive social construct. Do you remember the thousands of years of how we teach and evaluate? Poof, out the door. The the millions of educators, probably billions of educators around the world, having to reinvent and shift their worldview. That's what I mean when I talk about a social construct.
Mhm.
Engineers are not designed or not trained to be able to effect that change in a positive, uplifting manner.
And
That's
you
why
said
you
it,
need social scientists, because social scientists are the people that know how to do that. Go ahead.
and I want to just make this connection for anybody that missed it. The reason she said is highlighting the fact that that's not a strength of engineers, is those are the folks that are designing the artificial intelligence systems that's causing the changes to all these social constructs. So because of AI, the way learning happens needs to be changed. Because of AI, the way we evaluate people's productivity needs to change. Because of AI, the way that we compensate folks needs to change. Now, if AI is being designed by a bunch of people that are primarily educated in ones and zeros and mathematics, then are those social systems being influenced by the people that understand how humans behave and want to behave? Is that a how do you feel I did there in terms of
Excellent summary of what I'm trying to say.
big
It-
problem?
yeah,
It's like somebody's doing wonderful math to produce this answer, but it's like, wait a second, that's not the answer that we should be doing math for. They can do the math to
exactly.
create whatever answer, but they don't know what answer they're supposed to produce.
Yes. So let's bring it to entrepreneurial space. So for a very long time, the one of the tenets of how successful you are is how many employees do you have.
Mm.
Investors always, how many employees? People still ask me how many employees, and I balk at that question. I have one employee. I have one employee, and it's not me. And the reason why I say that is that with AI, you don't need a lot of employees. So if you are running an efficient and effective company in 2025, your thing should be that your number of employees should be very low. And what you should be evaluating is revenue revenue per employee. So if you're a $5 million company and you have 10 employees, you're way more successful than if you're a $5 million company, you have 100 employees.
I agree with that.
Again, it's a social construct change.
Yep.
You have to think about something differently.
I think the only thing about that kind of makes me like is when you said it's not it's not about you should be shooting to have you said you should be shooting to have less team members, and that made me like kind of like and I think that I understand what you mean from the perspective of the revenue per team member, because you're shooting for efficiency. Any team member you can take, almost any team member you can take, enhance with artificial intelligence or teach them how to use artificial intelligence, and they can produce at a much higher rate than they ever were before. Meaning, what you should be looking for is not how many team members do I have, but really how effectively am I utilizing my team. I agree with that at its core. And I think if I were to like add my own shade of I'm going to say green to it, it would be that you shouldn't, if you have team members, you shouldn't be looking to remove them, but you should be looking to figure out how to capitalize on the extra time that they have. So I completely agree with your perspective there. And my addition of color is when you are more efficient, there's an additional surface area set of things that could be done with that extra time, and more money can be made in those spaces that the AI blockers are kind of creating for your humans to make things happen. So that would be just my little and then putting that in there.
Well, that's excellent, and that's exactly how we position our solution. We're not here to eliminate jobs. We're here to amplify employees so that you can scale without adding headcount. So, how do you take the existing team that you have, amplify them, and go from 5 million to 8 million and not have to add more headcount?
Right.
You can't just give your team more work, but you can give them tools and solutions that makes them more efficient so that they can get more stuff done in a
Yeah.
shorter period of time.
Talk to me a little bit about, so we talked about the engineers and their role. And I think a lot of us watching understand the engineer and their role in designing AI. What happens when we inject a social science person into this equation? And what should that look like? Where are they injected? What do they do? What's their responsibility?
Okay, so I think that if I break AI into pieces, there's three main pieces of AI. There's or four main pieces. Let's do four. So there's a large language model, building that out, creating all those algorithms, all that stuff. Definitely need top-notch AI experts. They're all technical, right? I can't build a large language model. The second piece is a small language model. The small language model is a subset of data, and it uses the engine from the large language model. That's where you start bringing in your social scientists, because what kind of data do you want to put in a small language model? That's where the AI is going to be pulling the information from first. Then it's going to go to the large language model if you can't find it in the small.
Oh,
That's how you mitigate hallucination and bias. That's how you control for culture and sentiment. So that's the first piece of it. Then
can I see if I
system.
understand that properly?
Yeah,
And then
go ahead.
I'll have you go into the second piece. So you have your large language model that's kind of on the back end that your small language model can access. And then you take your social scientist and you engage that social scientist to optimize the niche or specific language model that can then access a large language model if what they're dealing with isn't sufficient. So having the social scientists engage with the point at which the human is going to be directly engaging with most allows for that interaction between, it's almost like layers on an operating system. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly. It is layers and operating system, and we're trying to create a graphic for it, and then finally, I just told my graphic team it can't be a still graphic. It has to be an interactive graphic. You got to see, yes, the the objects in the graphic needs to move, because unless it's moving, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So the data in the small language model is where the AI now starts to become more customized. That's where the power is, and that's where you start getting the social scientists so that they can help you determine what kinds of data you want to put in there to support your brand, support the culture, ensure that the people are having accurate information. Then the next place is, let's take prompt engineering. So let's break prompt engineering into two. There's a system prompt, where an example of a system prompt is, you are uh, an art history expert with over 30 years experience, and you are specialized in Renaissance period, and you know how to evaluate Renaissance pieces, and you can so forth. That's the system prompt. You write that once. You don't
Mm.
want to have to write that over and over and over and over. That is the most powerful piece of the AI, because that tells the AI how to behave. Again, that's what social scientists can do very well, because it's not writing series of code. It's writing in natural language in a way that directs the AI so that the AI dances the way you want it to dance when you want it to dance. And that's where social scientists are the most important. And if you go back to videos from OpenAI, YouTube in 2021, 2022, you'll hear them talk about creative writers being important, librarians being important, um, psychologists being important. Creative writers important because you need to be able to write well to get the AI to dance the way you want to dance. Librarians are important because you need to be able to catalog the data in a way that is doesn't conflict with each other. Um, and psychologists are important because you what just happened here.
Yeah,
Psychologists
a little
are
flash.
important because you need you want the AI to have a human like feel to it, and that's what psychologists can do. Psychologists help humans be more humans, so naturally can help AI be more human. And so that's where it is. And then the last piece, just to finish, is the end user prompt. So now I can just say to it, hey, tell me the most expensive art piece from 1592. It knows 1592 was part of the Renaissance period. Boom, 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 boom. Here, it's only giving me Renaissance paintings and artwork.
Right.
I don't have to sit there and learn how to do that prompt. I just need to talk to it like I would talk to it, like how you and I are talking right now, and it's
Mm.
responding.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So I've got two questions for you that remain, and then I want to give you some time to kind of share with folks specifically about Avatar Buddy and how to get a hold of you and that type of thing.
Absolutely.
The first question that I want to touch on here is, how does it look for a company to get this wrong and to get this right in terms of execution and operation? The
Um,
use of the social scientists, that is, around AI solutions.
uh, Getting it wrong is deprioritizing their value.
And then how does
So
that
we,
like so
what does that
what
look
does it look
like?
like, and how, and the impact that it has?
So what they do is they say AI is a piece of technology. They ask the their IT department to build out their AI agents. The AI agents are doing lots of really really technical things. When you talk to it, it doesn't understand what you're telling. So when the engineers are testing it, it's get doing what they want. But then when you give it to the end user,
Ah,
it doesn't work because the end user is not interacting with it the way the engineers are interacting with it.
jeez. Okay, so that's how it goes bad. So let's say we put a social scientist in there, and I guess it would just be the opposite of that.
Yeah. So it's because social scientist is trained to know that the first thing you're going to do is you're going to ask the end user questions, right? So we've all been on software development teams where you get these great developers and they don't want to talk to the end users. You're going to build something for somebody you don't want to talk to.
Yeah.
So what was the solution for that? They got business analysts. The business analysts go and talk to the end user. Now it's if you're using agile, it's product owners. But what skills do business analysts and product owners have? They have some liberal
Social.
arts degree, yeah,
Yeah.
social science degree.
Well said. Okay. Now here's the last technical question that I've got for you.
Okay.
I think you've made a tremendous argument for introducing more social scientists into this process. Now, let's pretend that there, is a startup, and they have to be really thoughtful about where they allocate resources and how they X, Y, and Z, and they're building an AI solution. Where do you stick that social scientist as a part of that team in a low budget scenario? Because I think a lot of startups are. How do they fold this in? What's your recommendation? Where does
So
that social
well,
scientist go?
so first of all, you're not hiring this person just to be a social scientist. So let me just kind of reorient
Yes,
this. What you're doing is you're hiring people that have social science degrees, so they've been trained to be social science, have had social jobs that are that 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 depend on you being a great social scientist to be successful, and you're bringing them into the team. So one of the things that I found is the best developers were not necessarily computer science people. There were people that had degrees in biology, had degrees in in creative writing, in political science, because they understand how to write code and they understand how to solve problems. Right? It's not enough just to know how to write a piece of code. You have to know how to use the code to solve a problem.
right.
And so they're trained to view the world differently. So that's how you're going to integrate it. And then there are obviously roles where product owners, business analysts, QA people, those are people that are very much about social sciences. Those roles lean heavily on the social science disciplines. And so if you're a startup, you want to you want to hire people that have that lens, but you don't have to hire them full time because you have AI. So what we do is we hire. This is our business strategy, and this is why we're still standing after all these other people are starting to fall apart. Is we look for seasoned professionals in the disciplines where we don't have any knowledge in, that are looking to ramp down their careers, but they still want to be relevant because we always want to have relevance and have a purpose. And we take their knowledge and their advice and we document it and we put it into the AI. and now we can use it, and our interns can use it. I'm a huge believer in interns. One person, uh um one person, one person runs an incubator, and he said, I'm at an age where I'm not taking anybody else into my incubator. So I said, can I create a digital twin of you, and we'll just use your digital twin when we have questions. And we we built out his digital twin. I think that took about 2 or 3 days, and then we tested it for about a month, just collaborating with him and the twin, and now just use the twin.
Very cool.
That's how a startup gets access to intense knowledge that they can't afford to pay for. I can't afford his hourly rate.
Well, and I think that's a good transition into, and if a startup doesn't know those strategies very well, how do they get a hold of you, and what does Avatar Buddy do? Because I'm sure there are people that are going to be excited to chat with you about how to create some of those solutions for themselves.
So, what we do is we do three things. We act as an AI advisor so that you can create a roadmap that maximizes your AI investment. Then we configure the AI agents that we call AI buddies so that you don't have to figure out how to do the system prompt and the small engineering, the small language model, and trying to figure out which one of the LLMs you're supposed to use for which function, job function. And and we stay abreast of what is happening in the AI space, and we proactively update your AI buddies. I just updated all of our buddies that were running on GPT-4 to 4.1. It's a better model. You don't even have to think, oh, what should I do? Is it 4.1? Um, we took some of our researcher buddies and we changed them to use Perplexity AI, because based on our testing, Perplexity AI does better research.
Mm.
They didn't have to figure that out. We figured that out for them. And those little nuances might not seem like a big thing, but it's a big thing when you're trying to get um, a buddy to do something, and it's like, I don't know.
It's a huge thing because every little bit of surface area that you're using artificial intelligence has a level of efficiency just like a team member does. And I believe in the future, we're in this world right now where the best computers, they're beating the next best computer by like, you know, hundredths or thousandths of a second, and
Yeah.
that being the difference in value, you know. And what that means is we're probably headed to that world with AI, and it might not be in 2 years, it might not be in 5 years, but the future economy, in my opinion, of artificial intelligence looks like models being slightly better or slightly worse than each other, and the costs related to that being the opportunity cost. And if you want to be the premier solution, you need to, you know, you can't have mistakes, because it's too easy to not have mistakes these days, with solutions like this. So the solutions that, the best AI sales agent, the best AI, marketing agent, the best, all these things, they're going to have a distribution of success rates. And the companies that have the best distribution of success are going to be the ones that continue forward, and the ones that don't are going to be the ones that don't make it. And we're at a stage now where if you can understand that and then apply it, you have tremendous opportunity in the future as all this stuff starts to settle and become a part of everyday life.
Absolutely. I believe that what's going to happen is we're going to have companies that are going to be smaller. We're going to have more people empowered, because Anybody will be able to set up a company. We will have more entrepreneurship. People will have more control. We're in the process of reverse renaissance,
Mm.
and the question becomes: do we want to have the negative pieces of what happened before Renaissance, or do we want to have the positive pieces? So the positive pieces are: there was more community. It was smaller. You were able to be successful to an extent in your little community. Um, but we need to do that without the exploitation that was happening. We have to do that without the mass concentration of wealth in the hands of a few people, and we need to do that without people being successful without exploiting. So, you know, I remember I hired this consultant and asked her what her hourly rate was, and it was she'd lowballed it, and I said to her, "Well, this other consultant that's doing pretty similar work is charging this, so we should pay you this." And so when you have AI and you have people and they're doing value-based deliverables, you can pay people what they're worth, because it's not number of hours they're on the clock, it's the value they're bringing. But then again, right, that's a massive social construct that we need to have happen, and that's the only way you could get out of this exploitive construct that we have right now, where very few people make millions and billions of dollars, and most of us are lucky if we break six figures.
I think you're right, and I believe you're right, and I hope you're right. How
Well,
can people get a hold of you, Stephanie? This was
well,
fantastic.
before I answer that,
Yeah,
we can make it right. We have the power to make it right.
I agree.
That's the thing. That's the beauty of AI, is if we believe that the world should be a certain way, we now have tools at our disposal to make it that way. So people want to get in touch with me, Stephanie, Stephanie at avatarbuddy.ai, or Google Avatar Buddy, and my contact info is on the web.
Awesome. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot, and I'm excited.
Th-
This
th-
is a great Tuesday so far.
Thanks, Zach. It's always a pleasure, and it's fun. I loved your questions because they were so different from the normal questions that I get asked, and so just being able to explain it in a slightly different way, I was like, oh, I need to say this again. So I've been making mental notes of things that I need to be able to say, and the little taglines and buzzwords that will convey what I'm trying to do much quicker.
Thank you for that compliment. Sometimes I feel like I throw some real serious compound sentences at folks, and I appreciate you saying that. Thank you, everybody who joined us today. I believe next week is a week off of the Business Strategy Roundtable, but we look forward to getting more content out there for you after that. I believe it's a mid-year AI update following that one. So thanks to everybody who joined us. Have a happy Tuesday and a great rest of your week. Bye,
Th- thank
everybody.
thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. All right. See you
Kim, give me
guys.
2 minutes. All right, call me back. Yeah.